it's we see videos or tweets or other things online, and that somebody in some random off country or something posts, and I still I'm almost shocked to see it. I don't no one is more surprised about Startup Brand success than I am, and I know there's a lot of people that are surprised about it, but yeah, I had no expectation it would be anything, but I knew it would help me and my friends. And Paul Graham from Y Combinator talks a lot about how you solve your own problems. That's the best way to start something that could be a successful company or successful startup. Solve your own problems. So that just happened to be the case for us. That we're solving our own problem, and we didn't have to make money. We didn't really care. It was just do it for fun, and if it works, if people want to come, great. If they didn't, then maybe we should just not do it.
Sounds highly strategic.
Yeah, I'm a visionary, vision for days.
Okay, so you started the events, and some were successful. Some only 4 people showed up, which is still successful. It's 4 people that showed up, took time out of their day. When did it go from an event that you were hosting to now events that other people were hosting?
Year and a half in, I had somebody walk up at the end of the event and said, "Hey, I love your values. I love the brand. I love your mission." Our mission today, which was not real, our mission then was about educating entrepreneurs. Today, it's to educate every entrepreneur in the world. And our values are to give more than you take, help others before you help yourself, and to make friends, not contacts. And so those things were not defined, but you could attend, and in theory, you would feel those things or experience those things, even if we hadn't explicitly said them. And
what are they again? Can you repeat them?
Yeah, to give before you take, to help others before you help yourself, and to make friends, not contacts. This idea of there's no awards given for people who get the most LinkedIn connections at the end of an event or anything. I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't matter, right? And CMX is a great example of this. The summits, and you go and you meet people and you hang out, and it's a big, huge event, but it feels like local. It feels like personal, and there's an authenticity to it. And I think that's what hopefully people felt in the early days. This person felt it. He said, "Can we do this in LA? We need this." And I said, that is just a terrible idea. No one will ever want it. And he was kind of a funny guy. And I don't know that he was our perfect brand representative. Hey, I would say it if he were here. He's one of my good friends now, but he was not the perfect guy to do it. But we said, what do we have to lose? And so we hosted it 2 months later, and it worked. People really liked it. I went down for it and did the interview, and it was a real positive thing. So okay, let's do it again. And then somebody else came and said, "Hey, I want to do it in New York." I said, "Okay, let's do it." And it worked. And so then we had, this is early 2012. So 2 years in, we have 3 cities, and we started hosting it in San Francisco. So then we have 4 cities. And that's when we sort of started to say, wow, this has all this natural momentum. The thing we were working on, which was a software product, did not have any of that. And we're working all the time on it. And so this sort of side project thing, it was starting to really build momentum without really much effort.
Yeah, I remember I had a similar experience when I was trying to build a food startup, and it was just banging my head against the wall. And then I launched CMX Summit, and everyone showed up and loved it, and it was great, and we made money. And I was just why the hell have I been doing this other thing? When it's always the easy thing you kind of overlook. But there's a reason it feels easier. It's because I say it's you're swimming downstream all of a sudden. I was swimming upstream, and then all of a sudden it felt like I was going downstream.
Yeah, the ball starts rolling down the hill versus you just pushing it up all day, every day.
Yeah, which I think there's a couple interesting things there to first pull out. One, it took you a year and a half until the second event even started, and 2 years before there were 3 or 4 events. So we both hear a lot in the industry of companies that want to get started from day one, start scaling. But we know communities do take time to establish themselves and build that core and then scale. Not that it has to take that long, but another example here of one that was a single event, very small, very focused for a long time.
I think too, if the product is the community, like maybe CMX or Startup Grind, you're building literally from nothing. You know,
Yeah.
if you have a product that has customers and has a community already baked in, then to amplify that community is, I would say, significantly easier and faster to scale than, you know, what maybe Startup Grind was, or what you've done,
Right.
because you have all this machine sort of running behind it.
Yeah. There's already a engaged group of people, whether or not they're a highly connected community yet, probably not, but you have a
Right.
pool of people that you can start from. And then the other thing there is just identifying what people are already doing. It sounded like you had people who wanted to contribute, who are already showing you that they wanted to become an ambassador, host events themselves. And so I always find that's really not always how businesses do it, but to look for what people are already trying to do organically and then just empower them and support them rather than trying to get people to do something that they're not organically doing.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. Again, that, like you said, like use the stream, use the direction of the stream and where it's already headed, and just, you know, start funneling some of that water into different paths.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so it started to grow, and then now you're at over 200 events. So talk a little bit about the journey from a few events to hundreds of events and what that scaling process looks like.
So we got into 5 cities, and then basically the next 6 months we got into about 5 more. So we were doing about 4 or 5 events a month, trying to figure out the right methods. We then tested enough. We'd had a few failures. We'd had a few successes. We sort of knew what it was. Then what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. So then we just completely simplified it. And we said, look, this is, you know, I had over 2 years done an event every month, which, you know, the thing about events that's nice is you have these 30-day iteration cycles. And so we would try new things every 30 days. And when we found what was right for us, which was a sort of fireside chat format, we never changed from that. When we did that after a year and the feedback was so overwhelming, we just said, let's not do anything other than that. And, so we started to put some rules in place, say, hey, everybody needs to do it like this. Here's your sort of, you know, cookie cutter, cut out of Startup Grind. And we just, we put a link on our website to start a chapter. And that became the most important thing we ever built. It took, our engineer in WordPress, like an hour to do it, or, half hour to do it. We had 2 applications within 48 hours. And we just started to, people started to come. And then we got an article on TechCrunch. We got 60 applications, and, we got this and we got that. And so
how'd you get that article? Did you seek that out, or it just happened?
Oh yeah, no, totally seeked it out. And, we'd gotten to about 15 or 20 cities, and we did this, hey, we've reached 20 cities, stretching it a little bit, but, we had a good person there that was willing to write about us. And at the time that was the place to get written about. Maybe it still is, I don't know. But it made a big impact. And then I was blogging a lot, and then I got access to write for TechCrunch on basically twice a month basis. And then that became this huge lead gen of people seeing it. And then the first link there was start a chapter. So, that was all of our marketing was me working weekends, writing TechCrunch posts. And, and we'd get 20, 30 applications each time one of those went out.
Wow. Well, okay. So interesting how you came to that fireside chat. I didn't know that you already had a bunch of events going before you arrived at that format. It's interesting because we tried having one consistent format with local CMX events before, and it didn't really work out because um, we wanted to have three speakers or at least one speaker, and we wanted it to be this like really high level of quality, and it was hard because some local cities don't even have three community professionals, let alone three speakers.
Right.
Um, and so like we ended up making our format a lot more flexible in order to accommodate different cultures and different cities and the different things that they thought would be good for their local community. What would you advise a company who's thinking about launching these programs on whether or not to have one consistent format or make it open? And if they do one format, how do they find that?
Well, the first thing I'd even say before that is to say, like, people are probably saying like why are people even doing this to begin with? It sounds like a lot of work. And I think what Start Grind sort of naturally found is something that we call customer marketing. And it's an iteration of community marketing or community building, but it's basically where you get your customers to be the voice of your product to other potential customers and existing customers. And events, it turns out, are the very best way to get people to have those conversations. Of course, they can go online and Google a question and get a forum, but to have the emotional and the connective experience of speaking to somebody who is engaged and interested and passionate about a brand or a product that you're looking at or interested in. Some of these digital products are so complex that it requires a 15-minute conversation, or it requires a 10-minute conversation or an hour-long lecture to really understand why you should use it. And sometimes a YouTube video is good enough, but a lot of times it isn't. And being able to engage with somebody, and your company, doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. And so I think for us with the ambassador, we call them chapter directors, but the ambassador program that we created with our chapters basically empowered, people always said, Derek, you're going to have to go do all the interviews. And I'm like, well, I can't. I have little kids. So like, if I have to be in all these cities, like, it's not going to work. Like, I'm not going to do it. And so what we did is, because we had these constraints, it forced us to find local people that could just do it all themselves, trust them, find people that match your values, trust them, give them all the tools, and then let them just go. And, today, as you mentioned earlier, we did 200 events last month with like 3 full-time people. And, like there's just no way, even when we were in 10 cities, there's no way I could fly to all these places, but when you get to, 20 or 30 or 50 or 100, it just becomes even more and more difficult. So in dealing with the volunteers, what we said is like, let's find the most simple thing you can possibly do that's going to work, and just deliver that, and just do it again and again and again and again. And so the fireside chat, for us, we did presentations. Actually, it came about because Jason Calacanis, who was one of our first speakers, he started this thing called Launch Conference. I invited him to speak. I didn't know him, but I cold emailed him. He said he would come, and he said, but I'm not going to do a talk, because we were doing talks at the time. He's like, I don't have time to prepare a talk, but I'll just show up. I'll walk up. You can interview me, and then I'm going to leave. And we're like, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds like a Jason Calacanis email.
Like, great. That's exactly what we wanted to do, and so that's exactly what happened. He showed up in the rain. He walked in, he talked for 45 minutes, and then he just left as soon as it was over. And we did all the work. And there was no PowerPoint, no projector, there was just all these things that we cut out that weren't needed. And we got down to like this really like authentic education, because it wasn't a sales pitch anymore. And
right.
And that's, and it felt different. So,
So
that's
simple enough that it was easy to replicate, easy to scale up, easy for anyone to do.
That's right.
What if somebody wanted to do a talk? Did you say no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for years. We let people do them occasionally now, like maybe 15 minutes at the beginning or something if they have. something they want to share, but we've said no to, I say no a lot.
Yeah,
But I listen to everything you listen to all the ideas and you try to, but we end up saying no to a lot of things and just say like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not what we do. So there's lots of other good places to do it. Do it at Startup Weekend. Go do your talk at the beginning of that, or go do it at Creative Mornings or TED or, but like, that's just not what we do.
got it. It's a lot of what you say no to is really important. Our friend Peter Mullen here said he was at that first startup grind with Jason
Wow.
Calacanis. So you have an OG community member watching. So you can't lie about anything.
Peter Mullen, the event, I don't know, he's like the event oracle.
He is.
We do a lot of startup grinds. He helped us a lot over the years.
He's been a great supporter of CMX as well. Hey, Peter, you get a good shout out. So you would say no if they wanted to do a fireside chat. What kind of support did you provide? I mean, if they didn't want to do a fireside chat, they want to do something else. What kind of support would you provide to these organizers? Did you help them figure out how to become better interviewers and how to run these events? Do you provide them with like that playbook? What kind of training did you provide? How do you make them good? How do you keep that quality high?
I mean, the biggest thing is we had to find people that matched our values. And that sounds so like, honestly, it just sounds really cliched. It's stupid to say that. But what we found is it didn't matter how high profile the person was or how connected they were. If they were like humble and like a give first kind of person, then we could teach them and we could get them connected and it would just work. And if they weren't, then it usually didn't work. And so we learned that through lots of mistakes, obviously. But so yeah, we would give them, I probably could not be called a playbook in the early days. It was probably like a Word doc with, 3.5 pages or something. We would do trainings. I onboarded the first, I shouldn't say I onboarded, but I approved the first 120 directors. I probably did 250 to 300 interviews to get to those. And then, I did many of the early trainings and then we figured out the model. And then our first employee, a guy named Francisco Cruz, he trained the first, 150 cities. And so the training was consistent, it was the same people doing it over and over again. We got better at it, hopefully. But yeah, it was, so we provided, art assets and you provided, how to do an interview and how to get speakers and how to keep it simple and how to do the marketing. And, we'd set up different things for them and pay for their MailChimp or their meetup or, other things like that to get them going. And then we just follow up with them like crazy. And, eventually we started to build tools to help them just to make their lives easier. But in the beginning, it's really like just sort of orally given, or we became just sort of a support crew, friends and general support. Just, hey, what's going on in your startup, and helping them personally and trying to, just get the movement, get some energy into the movement, which is when there's no momentum is kind of hard to get going, but you just kind of do whatever you have to do.
A lot of organizations have some sort of doc or playbook that they give to their organizers. Did you have anything like that, or did you purposely do it in person and orally so that you had that engagement?
We did, but I think it was really like today, our help resources are insane. I mean, any question you have, we've answered it, and there's a document and a file to help you with it. But it just, in those early days, I think it was all pretty humble. We had a small document for sure. At one point we wrote a, we called it the Bible, like the brand Bible, which nobody read. So, just trying to find easy, digestible ways to give people information through the tool. We use Basecamp for years and years and years, where, we created probably a lot of people in here have used Basecamp, but you create a project in there and we template it and you go in and check things off and we tried so many different things to try and help people to make their lives easier to run these things and learn how to do it. But I think a lot of it in the beginning is just one-on-one, just them seeing me, them talking to Francisco, talking to Joel, my co-founder, and sort of getting a feel for attending the events here. That was another thing. A lot of our leads came from the events in Silicon Valley. Everyone's coming here, right? And then they go home. And so they would attend, and I would like try to coax everyone at the event to start their own when they went home. And I'd usually get one or two after each one. And so they had seen it and felt it and experienced it. And so
Did you pay for them to come to that event, or they had to fly out on their own dollar?
they were just here. We just meet them at the event. I met this guy from Singapore at one of our events. He was like one of the last people there. He's like, hey, I want to, he kind of broken English. I was like, well, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I took a taxi. This is like in 2011. It's like, I took a cab from Stanford to your office in Mountain View. It was probably like a $40 cab. And I was like, man, this guy is like tenacious. Like he really wanted to be here. And I was like, immediately I was like, you seem like the type of person that should do Startup Grind in Singapore. He's like, I don't even understand what you're saying. I just wanted to say hi. I said, well, how are you getting home? He's like, I was going to call cab. I was like, I'll just give you a ride. So I give him a ride. Whole way I'm talking him into, I give him a Startup Grind shirt, and hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. Anyways, he went home and he ended up hosting events with us for like 4 or 5 years. He did like 60, I don't know, 50, 60 events with us. I have lots of stories like that of people who were like, I was like, you seem like a good person. You should just do this. And they're like, I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, just try it. Like you'll get a lot of value out of it. I have. And they tried it and then they ended up, being really successful with it. So.
Yeah. So I want to dig into that a little bit. I think one of the biggest challenges in all these programs is people are really excited to be the event organizer. Like, yeah, I'm going to be a local leader. I'm going to organize all these events. And then they do one and they're like, ooh, that was a whole lot of work. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. And they kind of fade away into the fog. What's the motivation for your organizers? How do you keep them engaged? How does somebody continue to do this for 4 to 5 years?
Well, I always, our values are about giving before you take and helping others first, but it's not give and never get anything out of it. That doesn't make any sense. So I always tell our organizers, like if you're not getting something out of this, like you're doing it wrong and you shouldn't do it. And the value is clear because like for me here in the Valley, when I was interviewing these people, whether it was Calacanis or Ann Murico on the board of Lyft, or Steve Blank, who's like this legendary, founder and author and professor at Stanford. I interviewed these people, and then not all of them, but some of them I became friends with. And like Steve, he became my mentor, and he's given me advice over the years that has like completely changed my professional trajectory. And so like, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about all the crap you have to do with events, right? And then my mind will go back to, if I hadn't done that event, I would have never met Steve Blank. And if I hadn't met Steve Blank, I would have never made this shift in my business that made us grow exponentially. And so,
yeah,
I think you got to have value. Everyone needs value. The organizers need value. The speakers need value. The attendees need value. And if the organizers don't get value, there's no event. So I would focus on like, what do the organizers get out of it? If it's, the first thing is they get a really cool brand on their resume, on their LinkedIn, whether it's, an existing company or maybe something in Silicon Valley or something in somewhere else, but they can get a brand that elevates them. They get put on a pedestal at these events so that it becomes their personal platform for people knowing who they are for their own brand. And then hopefully it ties into their existing business. So for Startup Grind, it might be a consultant or an entrepreneur looking for team members. For somebody like Atlassian, it might be, that they're a consultant and that they, are a Jira administrator and they're looking for a new job. It could be Salesforce, that they're a developer and, and they, help people build their instances or they're an MVP or whatever it is. Like it fits in with what they're already doing and it complements how they make money or how they want to make money. And they're not, these people don't do this for money because there's better ways. It's not designed for making money, but it's designed to elevate you in whatever areas are important to you. And so I think that was something that I very selfishly did for myself early on. And then we just copied and pasted that in cities around the world for other people.
I like that. But so people do make money hosting startup grind events, correct?
They do, but I mean, and that's one of our screens, is like the events are paid events and they can sell sponsorships, but if you're trying to make a full-time job out of it, it's like, we won't try to waste your time. We'll tell you, hey, that's not what you're going to do. You can't,
right.
It's like your 20% passion project, and
Yeah.
it will, you can make money in other ways. You'll make money through partnerships, relationships. We have our director in London, who started a VC. He was like an unknown guy 3 or 4 years ago. He is one of the most well-known people in the community, in the startup community in London. He's now a partner in a VC firm. He's invested in a bunch of really cool companies. Our guy in Melbourne, named Chris, same thing, sort of unknown person. Now 4 or 5 years later, I don't know anybody in Melbourne that doesn't know Chris Jonah.
I met him and he knows everybody.
So, like those kinds of successes is in some ways it's harder to get than money. But you have to, of course you have to feed your family. I have to feed my family. So, sure. If you get nothing out of it, there's no point. You've got to find some value for yourself. And if it's money, then this isn't the right thing for you. But if it's, some of these other things, you can definitely get a lot of value out of it.
You require that they charge for their events, right?
We do. Yeah, we do. And we just use it as a filter. All the events were free originally. And, and then I started charging and the quality of the attendee went up. The attendance number went down, but the quality went up. And so it paid for the expenses. It made for a much more positive experience because you had more high quality people to speak with. And, people weren't just coming for at one point it felt like Startup Grind was like a startup homeless shelter. Like people were coming for food because they would get food and then leave before the event even started.
I know how that goes.
And those people I do not have a lot of love for. So, I saw that a couple of times and I just said, man, like, screw this. Like, I'll just shut it all down. Like, we're going to charge. Those people are never coming back because the food is terrible. So why else? You're not going to come to Startup Grind for the food. So, like, we'll just put a price tag on it. And if no one comes, then that's a good indicator. Like, we should probably never do it again. But they did.
It's not valuable. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We get a lot of pushback sometimes from organizers that like, oh, in my city, no one charges for events. There's no way we can charge for an event here. Did you see that pushback at all?
Some places it's hard. I mean, it's hard in Rwanda to charge for an event. We don't take money out of Rwanda. I just want that to be clear. There's lots of places where we just give them all the money, just to help them. It's more about the mission for us, but I don't know. There's something when somebody pays for something, to me, it means a lot. Even if it's $2, $3, $4, $5, it means a lot. And
increases your attendance rates too.
Dramatically. Yeah. We were at we could be as low as 30% on a free event. We can be as high as 80% on a paid event.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think something to point out here. So anyone who's watching is probably thinking about building a community. Maybe it is for entrepreneurs, but it could be for all these different types of people. And so just kind of calling out what you spoke about, where it might be developers or customers. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of specific things. Like for entrepreneurs, they show up and eat food and leave sometimes because they're scrappy and hungry and whatever. Whereas maybe developers or CMS community members, we don't see that much, so we don't have to worry about that so much. But understanding their motivations and what's going to bring them to show up, and what's the motivation of an organizer in your space, what are they hoping to get out of it, and really trying to fuel that and support them.
Your customers in these programs are the organizers, right? So if the organizer has a great experience, if the organizer's life gets dramatically better, everything downstream will work. And it's sort of counterintuitive. You think, no, I got to make the experience great. Like, no, you just worry about the organizer. That's your core customer. You try and make their life as good as possible. And, if you figure out what that is, then it could be tickets to your user conference. It could be some like a cool hoodie that they get at the user conference that only the organizers get. I mean, people are, even in life, I think of the products that, like, we're easily impressed if somebody does something thoughtful. Doesn't need to be expensive, we're easily impressed when someone is thoughtful. There's a thoughtful experience, or, just think of the way you opened up your iPhone for the first time and just the way that you saw, I mean, it's just paper, but it's like just the way that it was crafted, it felt special. Or somebody writing a thank you note. I mean, it's still, I've got one sitting right here on my desk. Like, you just don't get them that much. It takes 30 seconds. It's a thoughtful thing to do. So, I think if you just create a thoughtful experience for the organizers, attendees will come, events will happen, the community will start talking to each other and helping each other. But if your organizers, they're everything. So if you're not helping them, if they're not getting a lot out of it, then you're screwed.
I love that. Yeah, that aligns with everything else we see in community, right? It's like, always make sure your creators or your sellers are the ones bringing the value to others. If you make them successful, then that's what's going to, drip through the rest of the community. The 99-1 rule, right? The 1% who are creating, if you can make them successful, everyone else is going to get value out of that.
And do you see, like, you were talking about money, but, do you see that a lot in these communities? Like, are most of these 1%ers non-motivated by money? Like, is that totally common, or is that, like, do they naturally see the other value outside of cash?
Yeah, I think it's always, it's got to have that foundation of intrinsic motivation. I think, like, when you pay, it should be coming from a place of fairness, right? Or maybe there is actual, like, employment opportunities and things like that. They should be properly compensated for time sometimes. Sometimes it's a volunteer program, though, and that's made very clear, and it's purely volunteer, right? Like, Wikipedia is completely edited by volunteers. A lot of these programs, the core value is almost always going to be tied to reputation and improving your own influence and connections and things like that. Sometimes if the demands are pretty high, like Lyft pays their 7-person advisory council. They give them a stipend on the year, but they're asking for a lot of time and specific asks, and that justifies a payment.
Yeah. That's a really cool program. I think I learned about it from you, but yeah, they have regional people and it rotates, I think, annually or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's like a really, like, if you got on that, I mean, that'd be like this huge accolade you would put on your maybe the coolest thing on your resume, that you are one of 7 or 8 or however many it is drivers
huge. Yeah.
around the world or the country.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, always understanding what kind of reputation are they trying to improve and aligning with that will always help. On that revenue front, we actually had a question from Brittany Wilson. It's a question, funnily enough, I get often too. Is Startup Grind your full-time business?
Yeah.
I get that with CMX a lot as well. And how does it generate revenue?
So I have gotten this question probably 1,000 times, and I chalk it up to not being good at explaining what we do. But I'm like, with 400 chapters, it's a full-time effort. So it wasn't for a long time, but in 2012, so 2 years after our first event, my co-founder and I, we sold the company we're working on, not for much, but enough to keep going. And we focused totally on Startup Grind. And we generate revenue by taking a percentage of a minority percentage of the revenue on tickets and sponsors from local chapters. But the vast majority of our revenue comes from either our conferences, which are in London and Australia and in Silicon Valley annually, and sponsorships and partnerships with companies like Google and Oracle and Intuit and others that want to be a part of the community that the people that we work with, the startups and entrepreneurs that we help. So we have a pretty small team. We have about 500 volunteers, but we have about 15 full-time people. Company's bootstrapped, been bootstrapped profitable every month for the last 6 years. Hopefully continue on for the next 6 years. And, we everyone's an all-star. Everyone could, run a 10-person team in those 15 people. Like most startups, everybody does everything, but it is a full-time effort. It has been for quite some time.
Yeah, now you've launched a software product, which is separate from Startup Grind, but essentially helps businesses do what you were able to do and the tools you needed to build for yourself to manage all these events. You run Bevy now, and Bevy, we use Bevy at CMX to run all of our local events. It's a tool I was very excited to see built because I saw more companies doing more of these local events and things like that, and not really having a great system for managing it and collecting all the data and organizing it in one place, but still giving your organizers autonomy. Obviously, there are 100 different event platforms, but nothing really built for these kind of distributed programs. So that's really exciting. Can you take maybe just a quick minute to share, like, what was that opportunity that you saw, and what is it that Bevy is able to do for companies that they couldn't do with other event platforms?
So about 3 years ago, our growth, which had been like this for years, just started like this. And the system that we had cobbled together was just buckling under the mass of what we were doing. And so my co-founder, who's a full stack engineer, we sat down and said, we just need to solve this problem. We looked at all the solutions. We couldn't find anything that matched what we needed. And so we just started building it. And then we launched it about 2 years ago with no intention of anyone but Startup Grind ever using it. But our growth started to take off again. And then we started to talk to other companies about it. And communities like Aging 2 joined, and CMX, and Atlassian was one of our very first customers. Docker and MuleSoft and others. And it was all inside of Startup Grind. And then we basically a year ago took the product out of Startup Grind because it's sort of we have like this community building product, and we have this start entrepreneur community. So we just kind of separated the two things. And really, it's a permissions-based platform that white labeled and single sign-on and fully integrates with the website. So it looks like, wow, you have this huge event, really cool customized event product inside of your own brand and your own website, which is what we always wanted for Startup Grind. And now we're fortunate to do that with a lot of great companies. And I just I'm amazed. Like, I thought, you said all these nice things about us at the beginning, but when I see like what a Duolingo is doing with their community, or what a Salesforce is doing with their community, or Atlassian, we're like the JV team, compared to these companies. And I think, my version of the future is that all the most innovative companies do these kinds of customer to customer marketing programs today. But I believe in the future that every company is going to have a program like this. Whether it's a bank or a security company, or whether it's a car company, or they're going to have opportunities. They're going to create opportunities for their customers to talk with their other customers and to, improve the lives of the 1% through programs like this. And so it's, we're just sort of getting started in the helping build other communities, but have been amazed. Like, again, when it's hard, David, like you and I building communities from the ground up with nothing behind us, but when somebody like a Duolingo comes in, puts one of these programs behind there, hundreds of millions of users, they'll do 500 or 600 events this month.
Wow.
And it's sort of mind-boggling with just nobody. I mean, with one or two people, and they're people just rally. You say, oh, it's so obvious. Languages, people want to get together and talk languages. It's so obvious. This was not obvious at all a year ago. They thought it was a good idea, but it's like, and I think it's the same with, you know, every industry. That if you say like, I don't know, like, well, do you have customers? Do you have people passionate about it? Give them a chance to meet each other and help each other. So
With
I don't know.
those
What have you seen with
programs,
CMX? Like when you get those people together, when you get your community members together, like what's been the result, whether it's at the summit or the series or.
oh yeah, I mean it's magical. Like I started CMX Summit, similar, like as a side kind of thing. I was running another startup, and just when 300 people came to that event, and they were all in the same room at the same time, the energy in that room was just, it was magical. It really was magical, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what I should be doing. So that's when I switched my full time focus over to CMX, sold my last startup. Um, there's nothing more powerful than bringing people together in person, especially people that have been wanting to connect with each other or have felt isolated and weren't able to connect with their people. And then you create that space for them. And it's just this like, oof, it's this warmth and energy that you won't get out of an online community in quite the same way. Or definitely not in marketing in the same way, right? It's just a different kind of interaction.
Well, it feels like that digital pendulum, like it's so like ramped up so hard that it started to swing back. And, you know, people are spending less. And I mean, I don't have to tell anyone this. We all spend so much time glued to our phones. I was with my family out of state yesterday, and I looked around the room and there's like five of us. We don't live together. We don't live near each other. There's five of us. We're not even talking. We're all just sitting on our phones. So like, you know, like, you know, I think the events and the companies that are using these things to empower their people and to just bring them back together. Again, you think about a digital product versus like, you know, my Nike shoes, which like when I put on a Nike, like when I get a new pair of Nikes, what do I do? I'm not going to smell these shoes, but what do? I take a good long smell of the shoe. I look it over. I might lick the bottom and send a picture to my friends or something. Like that's it. It's an emotional, physical experience, right? And with digital products, you lose that. But the best digital products are recreating that. And so when I go to a Duolingo event, okay, it's this event, it's this app on my phone, but now it's not just that, it's all these cool people I've just met, and it's the feeling I had, it's the jokes we told, it's the environment, the place that we went.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in the tech, you know, a lot of community people that probably are with CMX are in the tech world, and you know, we've got to recreate that, because if we don't, our competitors will. And
Yeah.
so trying to figure out how to do that and in a meaningful way.
Huh. I wish I had like another 2 hours. We could go a lot more. We're running out of time here, so I hate to even open up this can of worms that I'm about to. But briefly, I think like Nike is a really interesting example to bring up there, because Nike is an example of a company been around for a long time, does a ton of advertising, does a ton of brand awareness, right? And you see this in Nike and Coca-Cola and all the brands that we know really well. They'll pour millions of dollars into advertising campaigns and engagement and awareness campaigns. I imagine they have some pretty elaborate systems for knowing like how does that actually translate to a return for them. Um, these programs tend to have that same thing for businesses where it's like, great, like everyone's super happy and engaged. And it's clear this was like a net positive thing. But, you know, these companies like Duolingo, Atlassian, that, you know, we all know there's a challenge of proving and getting buy-in, proving the value of and getting buy-in for a community. What is the value? How is it enough just to say like we're bringing our customers together and they're going to feel good and that's going to give us a competitive advantage, or do we need to be tying these events to specific lines of revenue? How's that happening?
The first thing is we've got to change the way people talk about it. So you know, we're all community people. So we're used to like, I mean, look at me. I'm doing it right now. I'm saying we're used to acquiescing. We're used to, listening. We're used to being really nice. Like we've got to like take the bull by the balls, and we've got to change the way people are talking about what we do. And one way that that I'm trying to do it, or is in just changing the names of these things. Like I think, people look at a lot of what we do in communities like this touchy-feely thing. It's not. Like, we can generate revenue. We impact customer behavior. Customers is a word that lights up marketers' ears, And so, like, how are you actually creating revenue? Okay, now we can use Salesforce and Marketo and all of these funnels to track revenue. We have one customer who tracks $3 million in ARR directly back to their program annually. I mean, wow, what a concept, right? Like, how do you do that? Well, you see who attended, you see who buys, and you put those lists together, and you come up with a number of how it's impacting. So I think with all of the expensive and robust marketing tools that marketing teams now have and companies have at their disposal, we can much more easily track back what is the actual dollar value to this, in addition to the intangible things that are happening. But we've got to, as community people who, we're here for a reason, because we're the type of people that we are, we've got to take some responsibility, and we've got to say in those meetings, no, this is driving revenue. No, look at the numbers, look at the engagement, look at the surveys, look at the data. Like data. The best people in these programs and these big companies are all extremely data driven. And we, myself included, we've got to get better at doing this and framing this as a opportunity for growth, as a revenue opportunity, because if not, we're the first ones to get chopped when we have a bad quarter. And we should be the last thing chopped. I'll give you 20 other more. I was in product marketing at EA for 4 years. I'll give you 20 other things to chop before the community program, but I got to have good data to back it up. So I think the best companies that are doing this, that they start with data, and they started from a position of strength versus, like, we've been doing this for a while and it feels really good, and here's some pictures, and we've got to we've got to be more assertive than that.
That is spot on, and I think a very good point to wrap up here. Also, an opportunity for a plug. We just released our action plan in CMX Pro for measuring the value of community. It's a full guide to figuring that kind of stuff out. I mean, it's built on.
How long is it? How long is the guide?
14 pages about.
Wow.
What we're trying to do is take it from just understanding how to measure the value of community, but actually giving it's like a 6-week process for like doing the research, doing your data audit, getting buy-in from your team, like everything that actually goes into setting up a foundation so that for the next 12 months, you're set up to be able to track value and measure it and report on it and things like that. And it builds on exactly what you're saying. It's just like starting from that foundation of having the data and information so that you can point to it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to start there. It can't start from the fluffy goodness, even though that is where we're starting. When we start doing the work, we need to start from a place of gathering the data and being able to speak to that value, understanding the value we're trying to create, and then tie it back so that we can grow it and get more budget and get more tools.
Well, I'll say CMX Pro, our head of community for Startup Grind is a guy named Guillaume de Schmidt, and he's one of the smartest community guys I know, or people that I know. And he swears by what he's learning from the other community people inside Meetup Pro. So, hats off to you guys for that and the resource you're providing with that and things like this. And two, it's like who you talk to, right? If you talk to people that are revenue driven, talk to them in that way. If you're talking to the organizers, talk to them the way that we're used to talking to them. But, and I'm sure the guide talks through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Derek. This was incredible.
Thank you.
You've been an amazing supporter of CMX for a few years now, and just really grateful for everything you've supported me personally, and you continue to give back to the community and share and contribute. You've been generous with your time, so really grateful for you as a mentor and a friend, and for all that you've put into this space. I'm really glad to have more smart people like you building tools and sharing stories and sharing lessons in this industry.
Thanks so much. And if I can be of help to anyone, I'm just Derek at bevylabs.com is my main email. So just shoot me a note, or any questions or anything. Just, yeah, let me know how I can be useful. And hey, let's give a big shout out to David, who's getting married on Friday. So let's see it in the chat room. Yeah, exactly. Wow is right. Tying the knot. Tying the knot. Way to go.
That's right. This is my last meeting, and then I have to go
Mazel
wedding
tov.
plan. Tada. All right. Well, thank you, Derek. Thanks to everyone who joined us. This recording will be available for you. You'll get it by email after the webinar, so you can watch back and enjoy it all over again. Share it with your team. Do whatever you want. All righty. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Have a good week.